Dr. Harinder Sekon, former consultant, Vivekanand International Foundation, continues to be with us. Appreciate your patience. My question to you is about what I'm very curious is to see how the first-time voters or the young Americans or the young Indian Americans or any ethnicity really are going to vote this time, because I see how polarizing the debates have been, looking at the war-like situation, race and more. Do you think that also could play a role this time in this election when it's going to be either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump?
Good morning and thanks for having me on the show, Pooja. Yes, I was in the US just about a little over a month ago and traveled extensively through Virginia, Pennsylvania, and a state at North Carolina where my sister lives. And what I noticed was there was a perceptible shift of voters towards the Democrats. I mean, at that time, Kamala Harris had energized the entire campaign. And the feeling was that the first-time voter, which would largely be students and the younger, the people who've come in to the workforce during COVID or post-COVID, would come and vote largely in favor of Kamala Harris, because a lot of them are immigrants. You know, they have an immigrant background, and they feel that Kamala Harris would be, I mean, going by the policies, Trump would be tougher on immigrants and the job prospects, even though they are the qualified people. And also the student votes. That is very important, because I think this administration, the Biden administration, has really given, I mean, even in India, you see that the number they prioritized issuing student visas. So those people would definitely feel that they are safer with a Democrat administration. But things have changed. But where you saw a lot of Kamala Harris banners, I mean, you feel that there's a perceptible shift. The first debate, it was a little iffy, and the people who are already living there feel that the immigrants could also challenge their own prospects, the American prospects for the economic benefits, which would be better managed maybe by a probable Trump administration. And over here, what I noticed was, and I think what has come increasingly into the fray, is the role which North Carolina might end up playing in the election, because during the last 4 years, they've registered more than 400,000 first-time voters, North Carolina. And the shift has been not all for the Democrats. You had some people on the show, these Indian American community is still committed totally to Kamala Harris, because they feel, the area around the Triad, Chapel Hill, Durham, Raleigh. This is the IT hub in North Carolina. And the young American Indians, Indian Americans, they are totally committed to the Democrats, and they feel that they have done well during the last 4 years. But what has happened is, I'll just finish this quickly, that there's been a large number of Democrat voters who have deregistered, and there's a number of Republican voters. So it's a very close tie. And at the end of it, it'll boil down to who will come out and vote on Tuesday.
And often, as we have seen, and I understand that India and USA are very different when it comes to elections and voting. In the USA, for those who may not know, it's a multi-stage, multi-layered process. Unlike in India, let's say you go to the ballot and cast your vote, there are over months that decision is often taken and the voting takes place. I appreciate, Dr. Harinder, your views, and thank you for bringing us the family interactions as well, because I think that's where honest talks also sometimes happen. And with your extensive discussions, we are trying to understand what is unfolding on the ground. And you must have noticed that while Kamala Harris has been focusing on her immigrant background, of how her mother had struggled over the years to raise her and the kind of identity she has, Donald Trump recently mentioned about Hindus in Bangladesh and said that Hindus have been targeted, and had he been the president, this would have never happened. And he's reiterated this for India's Hindus, which I think is unprecedented when it comes to a presidential nominee. Let's take a look now about how some of the individuals, specifically from the Indian American community or prominent people, and why do they think that they would be likely supporting Donald Trump? Let's listen in.
मैं बहुत प्राउड फील करती हूँ कि उनके लिए मैंने उनको डिफेंड किया, उनको सपोर्ट किया, उनके लिए कैंपेन किया है, उनके लिए मैं पॉलिटिक्स में आई हूँ। तो मेरे लाइफ में पर्टिकुलरली प्रेसिडेंट ट्रम्प की इम्पैक्ट बहुत रहा है। और मेरे ख्याल से प्रेसिडेंट ट्रम्प इज द फर्स्ट president of United States who genuinely actually care.
Congressman, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us today.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, Congresswoman, you were a Democrat and you ran a presidential campaign in 2020, and now you have endorsed President Trump. What made you change your decision and becoming, endorsing President Trump, and what was the reason for you to do so?
Oh, first of all, I left the Democrat Party a few years ago because today's Democrat Party is controlled and led by this elitist cabal of warmongers who are undermining our freedom, fundamentally censoring free speech, undermining the rule of law and our democratic republic. There are many examples that I could give you. I wrote a book explaining in great detail why I left the Democrat Party. It's called For Love of Country, Leave the Democrat Party Behind. And in this election, the choice was very clear for me in why I endorsed President Trump over Vice President Kamala Harris. It is because of those fundamental rights and freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution and the words that our founders had for us in this country as Americans, our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Under Vice President Harris over these past 4 years, along with Joe Biden, they have undermined our freedom and continue to do so. They have weaponized government entities to go after their political opponents. I've personally experienced political retaliation by this administration, putting me on a domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies just one day after I did an interview criticizing Kamala Harris's record as vice president and talking to the American people about the dangerous consequences of a Kamala Harris presidency. They have ruined our economy, increased the cost of living. We're seeing increased crime, open borders, over tens of millions of illegal immigrants coming across our borders, many of them actually violent convicted criminals coming from other countries. And on a foreign policy front, they have embroiled us in multiple wars in different parts of the world and have pushed us to the brink of World War III and closer to nuclear war than we ever have been before. On every account, the choice is clear that President Trump in this election is our best hope as a country to get back on that path where we can look to a future of peace and freedom and prosperity for all Americans.